Have you ever felt that uncomfortable sensation that something isn't right, but you couldn't pinpoint exactly what? Imagine finding a simple object, a condom, in your wife's car. Such a small sign, yet at the same time, so revealing. That's exactly what happened. The betrayal was there, hidden in plain sight, and the truth was impossible to ignore. When trust is broken, what's left? Is it possible to rebuild everything after such a revelation? The pain of discovery, the shock of betrayal, and the journey to find peace become the central questions. But is the true betrayal only in the physical act? Or is it also in the broken trust, the unspoken lies? How would you react if you found something like this? This story of infidelity isn't just about a man and his wife, but about what happens when trust is destroyed and how, despite everything, it's possible to move forward, rebuild, and even find a new path. And the best part? You can learn from it, understand the signs, make smarter decisions, and avoid falling into the same trap. Are you ready to discover what really happens when the truth is revealed? The truth doesn't always come to us clearly. Sometimes, it hides in subtle details, waiting for the right moment to be revealed. This story of infidelity, shared by a subscriber, brings an intense journey of betrayal, discovery, and rebirth. To protect everyone's identity, some details have been changed, but the essence of pain and overcoming remains intact. What you're about to hear isn't just another tale of betrayal. It's a mirror of reality for many, a silent warning for those who trust blindly. Stories of infidelity always carry an emotional weight, and this one is no different. What starts as an apparently solid marriage transforms into a minefield of lies and secrets. There's nothing more devastating than realizing the person you love might be living a double life. And believe me, the signs are always there, but we often choose to ignore them until the truth imposes itself, overwhelming and undeniable. And when that happens, there's no going back. If there's one thing this story of betrayal teaches, it's that infidelity and betrayal never happen by accident. Small missteps become big disasters, and trust, once broken, is hard to restore. But before we reach the end of this journey, let's start from the beginning. Everything seemed normal until small signs began to appear. Betrayal rarely happens out of the blue. It sneaks in through small details, subtle behavior changes that, when added up, form a picture impossible to ignore. That's exactly what happened with the narrator. Luana, his wife, started acting strangely. Suddenly, she seemed more distracted, less affectionate. Her touch no longer had the same warmth. Her eyes would wander, and the once predictable routine was now filled with empty excuses. Nothing explicit, but those who love can sense when something is out of place. The first major alert came when Luana bought an expensive piece of jewelry, something that wasn't part of her usual style. She'd never been one for accessories, and, in addition, their finances were always controlled. So, why the unexpected gift? Who was it really for? The second sign came days later, with a phone call in the middle of the night. Luana claimed her purse had been stolen, but the way she told the story didn't make sense. There was nervousness in her voice, as if she were improvising. He felt a chill, that intuition that logic tries to ignore, but the heart insists on listening to. Here's a secret few share. Infidelity doesn't hide in the big act of betrayal, but in the small lies that precede it. And doubt began to eat away at the narrator's mind. Was he just being paranoid, or was something wrong? What once seemed like a fleeting fear was now beginning to transform into an unsettling certainty. But there was still no real proof. Sometimes, life places us in uncomfortable choices. The narrator, following that feeling that something was wrong, made a difficult decision. He could no longer live with the doubt. The moment of truth was approaching, and he knew he needed concrete evidence. That's when he found the condoms in Luana's bag before her work trip. Something so simple, but so revealing. Their presence didn't make sense. If she was traveling alone, why would she be carrying something so intimate, so personal? The truth hit him like a punch to the stomach. In situations like this, it's tempting to convince ourselves that we're imagining things. But reality is stubborn, and the narrator knew he had to face it head-on. He didn't want to be swept away by the emotion of the moment, so he opted for something more rational. He hired a private detective. The decision wasn't easy, and doubt still hung in the air. But what was at stake was his peace of mind, the trust that had been built, and most importantly, the respect he had for himself. The detective could provide the answers, and he was ready to face whatever came his way. The lesson here is that often the first step to resolving an internal conflict is confronting reality head-on. But what do you do when you have proof of betrayal in your hands? The narrator was now about to discover that knowing the truth isn't always the hardest part. What comes next? The pain of confirmation is indescribable. The narrator had his suspicions, but the images from the detective made everything more concrete, more palpable. Luana was, in fact, with another man. The truth, which he had feared so much, finally presented itself before him. That moment was a turning point. He could no longer deny it. Trust was broken, and with that, the need to act became urgent. There was no room for illusions or excuses anymore. What remained now was to take control of the situation and decide the next step. What many don't understand is that betrayal doesn't just affect the relationship between two people. It alters the entire family dynamic, perceptions about the future, and often the identity of the person who's been betrayed. The narrator knew that now the focus should be on his family and, most importantly, the children. The decision was clear. He needed to find a lawyer and start the divorce process, seeking custody of the children. After all, they were what mattered most. And it wouldn't just be a legal battle, but an emotional war, with one goal: to protect what he loved most. This is a reality that few want to face. After betrayal, rebuilding often starts with difficult choices. The narrator was ready to move on, but the journey would be long and painful. And in the midst of this turmoil, one question arose: how far was he willing to go to ensure his family's well-being? The divorce process took an unexpected turn. Luana, realizing the devastating impact of her actions, tried to redeem herself. She approached the narrator and suggested therapy as a solution, a way to rebuild what had been broken. However, her words felt empty to him. How could he trust someone who had betrayed him? The narrator felt that, despite Luana's effort, the wound was still too fresh, and her proposal for healing seemed more like an attempt to ease her own guilt than a true desire for reconciliation. The lesson here is that healing cannot be forced. Often, after a breakup, the pain is so immense that any attempt at reconciliation feels small in comparison to the magnitude of the loss. The narrator, aware of his need to move forward, made the hardest, yet most liberating decision. He would not try to heal something that was already broken. He chose to rebuild his life in a new way, and for that, he met Anna, someone who entered his life slowly, without haste, no promises, just with the purpose of helping to erase the shadows of the past. Recovery after betrayal is a personal and unique process, and often it means leaving the past behind. The narrator chose to follow that path, seeking a lighter and healthier future by Anna's side. But could the wounds of the past ever be completely forgotten? The answer to that question was still to come. Over time, the relationship between the narrator and Anna grew naturally. Contrary to what many might expect, the relationship wasn't rushed or forced. Anna entered the narrator's life gradually, respectfully, and carefully. The children, who initially resisted the idea of another person in place of their mother, slowly began to accept her. Trust, now, was being rebuilt, not in a blindly idealized love, but in respect and understanding. The narrator felt at peace, as if he had finally found a new direction for his life. This is a crucial point in emotional recovery, leaving the past where it belongs. The narrator was no longer a prisoner of the shadows of betrayal. He and Anna began to make new plans, with more serenity and a security he hadn't felt before. At the same time, he maintained a cordial relationship with Luana, not out of obligation, but because he recognized the importance of maintaining harmony for the sake of the children. This didn't mean that the past was erased, but rather that he had learned to separate the different aspects of his life. In the end, the peace the narrator sought was in accepting that, although he couldn't change what happened, he could indeed build something new and stronger. And by doing so, he stopped being a prisoner of what had hurt him, finding the freedom to move on. But how long could this new peace last? Only time would tell. Now that you've heard the story of infidelity, it's clear that the choices of one moment can change the course of an entire life. What would you do if you were in the narrator's shoes? How would you react to discovering a betrayal in such an impactful and irreversible way? The truth is that, often, the biggest challenge isn't dealing with the act itself, but with the rebuilding after it. And more importantly, are you ready to take control of your life and learn to identify the signs before being caught by surprise? If something in this story resonated with you, if you recognize the pain and dilemmas of someone facing betrayal, now it's your turn to act. The first thing you need to understand is that the past does not define your future. It's time to take the first step toward a more balanced life, with trust and wisdom. So, what will you do now? Will you continue to let doubt and fear govern your life? Or will you rise, learn from what you've seen here, and begin to pave your own path? Don't miss the chance to apply everything you've learned today. Subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and keep learning how to navigate these complex situations. Transformation begins when you decide you won't be a prisoner of circumstances anymore, but the master of them. Are you ready for this?